first thing they teach you in the Marines is that survival depends on awareness. Watch your surroundings. Notice patterns. Trust your gut. These lessons saved my life in combat zones, but I never thought they'd save me in my own living room. My name is Ethan Carter. I spent 8 years as a Marine before trading desert sand for the sweltering heat of Austin, Texas. Those years in uniform changed me in ways civilians can never truly understand. I learned that danger rarely announces itself. It creeps in quietly, disguised as routine, until the moment everything explodes. I saw friends die because they missed subtle warning signs. I survived 3 tours because I never stopped watching, never stopped looking for threats hiding in plain sight. After seeing what humanity was capable of overseas, all I wanted was normalcy. A steady job, a peaceful home, and a family who loved me. When I finally hung up my uniform, I swore I'd leave the hypervigilance behind. No more sleeping with one eye open. No more scanning every room for exits. No more treating strangers as potential threats. I was determined to be just a regular guy with regular problems. For a while, I thought I had succeeded. Melissa came into my life like a hurricane. Blonde hair, green eyes, and a smile that could light up the darkest corners of my mind. We met at a charity event for veterans where she was volunteering. I was still struggling with the transition to civilian life, uncomfortable in my own skin, feeling like an alien among people whose biggest worry was traffic on their morning commute. But Melissa saw through my awkwardness. She approached me while I was hiding by the refreshment table, pretending to be fascinated by the selection of finger sandwiches. "You look about as comfortable as a cat in a bathtub," she said, handing me a glass of punch. I laughed, surprised by her directness. "That obvious, huh?" "Only to someone who's looking." She had a way of tilting her head when she was interested in what you were saying, giving you her complete attention. "First time at one of these events?" "First time at any event in a while," I admitted. "Still getting used to being back." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "My dad was in Vietnam. He said the hardest part wasn't the war, it was coming home to a world that didn't make sense anymore." Something about her drew me in immediately. The way she listened when I spoke, really listened, not just waiting for her turn to talk. The way she touched my arm when she laughed at my jokes. The way her eyes held mine a beat longer than necessary. We talked for hours that night, long after the event had ended. She told me about her job as an elementary school teacher, her dream of opening a small bookstore someday, her close relationship with her parents. I told her about growing up with a single mom after my dad left, my time in the Marines, my uncertainty about the future. She didn't flinch when I briefly mentioned Afghanistan. She didn't look at me with that mixture of pity and discomfort I'd come to expect from civilians. At the end of the night, I asked for her number, half expecting rejection. Instead, she took my phone and entered her contact information, naming herself Hurricane Melissa with a tornado emoji. "Because I'm going to blow you away," she explained with a wink that made my heart race. Our first date was dinner at a small Italian restaurant. Our second was a hike through McKinney Falls State Park. On our third date, we went dancing at a country bar where she laughed at my clumsy attempts to two-step and then patiently taught me the basics. By the end of the night, I was twirling her across the floor with something resembling competence, her laughter like music over the band's cover of Amarillo by morning. 3 dates in, I knew she was the one. I'd never believed in love at first sight or soulmates or any of that romantic nonsense. But with Melissa, everything clicked in a way I couldn't explain. For the first time since leaving the Marines, I felt at peace, like I'd found my place in the world again. I proposed 6 months later at that same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. I'd planned an elaborate speech, but when the moment came, my mind went blank. I simply held out the ring, a modest diamond that had cost me 3 months' salary, and asked, "Will you build a life with me?" She cried, nodded, and said yes before I'd even finished speaking. The entire restaurant applauded as I slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. A year after we met, we were married in a small ceremony with close friends and family. My mother cried during the vows, later telling me she was relieved to see me finally happy after everything I'd been through overseas. My brother Ryan slapped me on the back at the reception and said, "You hit the jackpot, man." "You're my rock, Ethan," Melissa whispered on our wedding night, her fingers tracing the scar on my shoulder from a piece of shrapnel that nearly killed me in Afghanistan. I'll never need anyone else. I believed her. Maybe that was my first mistake. The early years of our marriage were everything I dreamed of during those long nights in the desert, staring at her photo by flashlight. We bought a small starter home in a decent neighborhood, spent weekends painting walls and assembling furniture from IKEA. We hosted barbecues for friends and holiday dinners for family. We talked about our future, how many kids we wanted, where we might travel, what our retirement might look like decades down the road. Melissa continued teaching third grade, coming home with amusing stories about her students and occasional frustrations about school politics. I worked security jobs at first, then used my GI Bill benefits to get a degree in criminal justice. By our third anniversary, I'd landed a position at Sentinel Security, a private firm that specialized in high-end protection services for corporate executives and wealthy individuals. My military background made me valuable to them, and I quickly rose through the ranks. The hours were long, but the pay was excellent, and I could provide Melissa with the kind of life I'd always wanted to give her. 5 years into our marriage, we had our daughter Lily. The pregnancy was unexpected, but welcome. Melissa glowed during those 9 months, her body changing to accommodate our growing child. I attended every doctor's appointment, read every parenting book she brought home, painted the nursery a soft yellow at her request. The moment I held Lily in my arms, red-faced and screaming in the delivery room, I made a silent promise that I'd protect her from anything and everything. Unlike my old man who walked out on Mom and me when I was 12, leaving us with nothing but debt and broken promises. That day changed me forever. I swore I'd never be that kind of father or husband. No matter what, Mom had to work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I'd come home from school to an empty house, make my own dinner, and put myself to bed. On weekends, I'd see her for a few hours between shifts, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but still finding the energy to ask about my schoolwork. "Never abandon your family, Ethan," she told me once, her hands rough from cleaning other people's houses. "It's the worst kind of betrayal." Those words etched themselves into my bones. Family was sacred. Loyalty was everything. These weren't just concepts to me. They were the foundation of who I was as a man. When Lily was born, I took 3 weeks off work to help Melissa adjust to motherhood. I learned to change diapers, to heat bottles to the perfect temperature, to soothe our daughter's cries in the middle of the night. I wanted to be the kind of father who was present, involved, engaged, everything my own father had failed to be. Melissa recovered slowly from the birth. She struggled with postpartum depression for months, some days barely able to get out of bed. I took on more household responsibilities, balancing work with caring for both my wife and our newborn. It was exhausting, but I never complained. This was what commitment meant, being there through the hard times, not just the good ones. "I don't know how I'd survive without you," Melissa said one night, watching me walk the floor with a colicky Lily. "You're amazing with her." "We're a team," I replied. "That's what marriage is." Eventually, the darkness lifted. Melissa returned to her teaching job when Lily turned 1, and we settled into a new normal. Our daughter grew from a helpless infant into a curious toddler, then a spirited preschooler. She inherited Melissa's green eyes and my stubborn determination. Her laughter became the soundtrack of our home. Life in Austin was good. Our 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb wasn't a mansion, but it was ours. Melissa decorated every inch with care, transforming it from a house into a home. She had a talent for making spaces feel warm and inviting. Family photos lined the hallway. Our wedding, Lily's birth, vacations to the coast, holiday gatherings, a visual timeline of our happiness. "Daddy's home," Lily would shout every evening when she heard my truck pull into the driveway. 5 years old and already the spitting image of her mother, except for my dark hair and stubborn jawline. She'd run to the door, pigtails bouncing, and launch herself into my arms. Those moments, her small body pressed against my chest, her childish voice telling me about her day, they were everything to me. Melissa would greet me with a kiss, asking about my day while the smell of dinner filled the air. She'd listen to my stories about difficult clients or interesting security challenges, offering advice or simply a sympathetic ear. We'd eat dinner as a family, Lily chattering away about kindergarten, Melissa and I exchanging glances over her head, sharing private smiles. It was picture perfect, or so I thought. The changes were so gradual I almost missed them. Looking back, I can identify the exact moment things began to shift, though I didn't recognize it at the time. We were at a neighborhood cookout, summer of last year. Melissa was talking with Sarah from 2 doors down when a couple we'd never met joined their conversation. The husband was tall, muscular, with the kind of looks that belonged in fitness magazines. I noticed the way Melissa's body language changed. She stood straighter, laughed more, touched her hair repeatedly. Later that night, I asked casually, "Who was that couple you were talking to?" "Jason and Amanda Reynolds," she replied, removing her earrings at the vanity. "They just moved in down the street. He's a personal trainer. She's in real estate." "Seemed friendly," I commented. "Yeah, they invited me to check out his gym. Apparently he's offering neighborhood discounts." I didn't think much of it at the time. Melissa had never been particularly interested in fitness beyond occasional yoga classes, but a week later she announced she'd signed up for a membership at Fit Life Gym, where Jason worked. "I need to get back in shape," she explained, though her body had long since recovered from pregnancy. "I've been feeling sluggish lately." Suddenly she cared more about fitness than she ever had before. She'd always been naturally slim, never needing to work hard to maintain her figure, but now she was toning and getting stronger. She went to the gym 3 times a week, always returning showered and dressed in fresh clothes, explaining that the gym's facilities were too nice not to use. "You should see the personal trainers there, Ethan. They really know what they're doing," she'd say, a hint of something I couldn't quite identify in her voice. New clothes appeared in her closet, tighter, more revealing than her usual style. Expensive workout gear, low-cut tops, dresses that hugged every curve. "Do you like this?" she asked once, modeling a red dress I'd never seen before. It was on sale. I later found the receipt. It wasn't on sale. It cost more than our monthly utility bill. Her phone was permanently attached to her hand, and she turned the screen away when I walked by. The soft chime of incoming texts would sound at all hours, and she'd jump to check them. "Just looking up recipes," she'd say with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Or work stuff. You know how it is? I wanted to believe her, needed to believe her, because the alternative meant that everything I'd built my life around was a lie. Our sex life changed too. Sometimes she was more passionate than ever, trying new things, taking control in ways she never had before. Other times she was distant, claiming headaches or exhaustion. The inconsistency left me confused and increasingly suspicious. One night, after she claimed to be too tired, I woke at 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty. I found her in the living room, bathed in the blue light of her phone screen, texting someone. When she noticed me standing in the doorway, she quickly locked the screen. "Couldn't sleep," she explained too casually. "Didn't want to wake you with my tossing and turning." I nodded and went back to bed, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, listening to her return to the bedroom nearly an hour later, wondering who was worth talking to in the middle of the night. Small things continued to bother me. Unexplained absences, grocery trips that took 3 hours, book club meetings that suddenly ran late, her disinterest in our usual TV shows, claiming she'd rather read, the way she no longer shared stories about her students or colleagues, giving vague responses when I asked about her day. I found myself checking our credit card statements, noting charges at restaurants I'd never been to, stores we didn't usually shop at. Nothing definitive, nothing I could point to as proof of anything improper, but enough to feed the growing unease in my gut. I hated myself for the suspicion. This was Melissa, my wife, the mother of my child, the woman I trusted with my heart and my life. She wasn't capable of betrayal. Was she? Then the break-in started. 3 houses in our neighborhood hit in 2 months. Nothing violent. The families were always out when it happened, but enough to put everyone on edge. At our neighborhood watch meeting, people were panicking. "What if they come when our kids are home?" asked Sarah from 2 doors down, clutching her husband's arm. The security professional in me saw an opportunity. Not to spy on my wife, I wasn't ready to admit that was my true motivation, but to protect my family. A justifiable reason to install the cameras that might confirm or dispel my growing suspicions. That night, I made a decision. My job gave me access to security equipment that most civilians couldn't get. High-quality cameras, small enough to blend into any room. I installed them throughout our house the next day while Melissa took Lily shopping. One in the living room hidden in a bookshelf, another disguised as a smoke detector in the kitchen. One in the hallway and one in our bedroom tucked into the air vent. I added 2 exterior cameras as well, one focused on the front door, another on the driveway. I set everything up on a secure server I could access remotely. The cameras activated with motion sensors and stored footage for 2 weeks before automatically deleting it. It was the perfect system. Our home would be protected and I'd have peace of mind. There was just one problem. I forgot to tell Melissa about them. Not intentionally at first. She and Lily came home earlier than expected, loaded down with shopping bags and ice cream, and it slipped my mind in the chaos of the evening. Then days passed, and it felt increasingly awkward to bring it up. By the way, honey, I've been recording everything you do in our house for the past week. Yeah, that would go over well. So I said nothing. I checked the footage occasionally, fast-forwarding through hours of normal household activities. Melissa cleaning, Lily playing with her dolls, the babysitter watching TV after Lily went to bed. Nothing unusual until there was. It started with a black pickup truck. I noticed it one evening while reviewing the exterior camera footage, parked across the street for nearly an hour while I was at work. The same truck appeared the next day and the next. Always when I wasn't home, always around the time Melissa claimed to be running errands or meeting friends. My heart pounded as I fast-forwarded through the footage, waiting to see what would happen. Part of me still hoped for an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a delivery driver on break. Maybe it was a neighbor visiting someone else on our street. On the 4th day, the driver got out. Tall, muscular, with the kind of looks that belonged in a men's fitness magazine. Dark hair cut short on the sides, longer on top. Expensive watch glinting in the sunlight. Jason Reynolds, our new neighbor, the personal trainer from Fit Life Gym. He walked with confidence to our front door and knocked. The exterior camera caught Melissa opening the door, her face lighting up with a smile I hadn't seen in months. She stepped aside to let him in. My throat tightened as I switched to the indoor cameras. They talked in the kitchen for a few minutes, standing closer than strangers should. His hand brushed hers when she handed him a glass of water. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm the way she used to touch mine. "Jason, you're terrible," she said, playfully slapping his chest. Then she led him upstairs, out of view of the cameras I'd installed on the main floor. My stomach churned as I imagined what was happening in our bedroom. In our bed. I gripped the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. I sat there staring at the empty kitchen, my mind filling in the blanks. 20 minutes passed before they came back downstairs. Her hair was messed up. His shirt was untucked. They kissed at the door before he left. Not a friendly peck, but the kind of kiss that promised more. "Same time Thursday?" he asked, his hand lingering on her hip. She nodded, biting her lower lip. "I'll be waiting." The footage continued as Melissa straightened the house, humming to herself. She checked her appearance in the mirror, fixing her hair and applying fresh lipstick. Then she called someone. "He just left," she said, her voice crystal clear through the camera's microphone. "No, Ethan won't be home for hours." A pause. "I know, it's getting complicated, but I can't stop now." I closed the laptop, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I rushed to the bathroom and vomited, my body physically rejecting what I just witnessed. When I could stand again, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at me was a stranger, pale, shaken, betrayed. For a moment, I considered driving home immediately, confronting Melissa with what I'd seen. The rage building inside me demanded action, demanded answers. I imagined storming into the house, showing her the footage, watching her face crumble as her lies collapsed around her. But the tactical part of my brain, the part that kept me alive in combat, told me to wait, to gather more intelligence, to understand the full scope of the situation before I acted. Incomplete information led to bad decisions. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before I made my move. That night at dinner, I watched her serve pot roast, my favorite meal, with a smile on her face. She asked about my day, told me about Lily's progress in swimming lessons, suggested we plan a weekend getaway for our upcoming anniversary. The perfect wife, except for the stranger's cologne I could still detect faintly on her skin. "Is everything okay?" she asked, catching me staring at her. "You seem distracted." I forced a smile. "Just tired." "Big project at work." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Don't work too hard, babe. We need you here." The irony made me want to flip the table, to scream, to demand the truth. Instead, I squeezed back and asked for seconds. Later that night, she initiated sex for the first time in weeks. I almost refused. The thought of touching her after she'd been with him making my skin crawl. But that would raise suspicions, so I went through the motions, closing my eyes, pretending everything was normal, while feeling like I was dying inside. After, as she slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, the weight of her betrayal crushing my chest. How long had this been going on? Was Jason the first, or had there been others? Had any part of our marriage been real, or was I just a convenient provider, a reliable husband who paid the bills and didn't ask too many questions? I thought about Lily, sleeping innocently down the hall, unaware that her world was built on lies. What would this do to her? How would I explain why Mommy and Daddy couldn't live together anymore? The thought of her pain added another layer to my own. So I watched. For 2 weeks, I collected evidence. Jason came to our house 4 more times, always during my shifts at work, always for the same purpose. Sometimes they didn't even make it upstairs, their passion too urgent for them to wait. Once, they used the couch where I sat with Lily for our nightly story time. I ran his license plate through the security firm's database. Jason Reynolds, 34, personal trainer at Fit Life Gym. The same gym Melissa had started going to 3 months ago. He had a record, nothing major, just a DUI in his 20s and some minor fraud charges that were dismissed. Enough to tell me he wasn't the upstanding citizen he pretended to be. I dug deeper. He'd moved to Austin from Dallas 6 months ago. Before that, he'd worked at gyms in Houston, San Antonio, and Phoenix, never staying in one place for long. There were gaps in his employment history that raised red flags. The more I looked, the more my unease grew. One night, while Melissa was asleep, I checked her phone. The passcode had changed. It used to be Lily's birthday, but that no longer worked. Another secret kept from me. I managed to access her laptop instead, finding emails between her and Jason dating back 4 months. The early ones were professional, workout schedules, nutritional advice. Then they became personal, flirtatious, explicit. I also discovered that Melissa had opened a separate bank account I knew nothing about. She'd been transferring small amounts from our joint account. Never enough to raise suspicion, but it added up to over $15,000 over the past 6 months. Preparing her escape route, I figured, there were searches in her browser history for apartments in Dallas, flight prices to cities across the country, divorce lawyers in Austin. My stomach dropped as I realized the extent of her planning. This wasn't just an affair, it was an exit strategy. Most damning of all was a draft email addressed to her sister Amy, never sent but saved in her drafts folder. I can't keep living this lie. Ethan's a good man and a great father, but I've felt trapped for years. Jason makes me feel alive again. He understands me in ways Ethan never could. I know everyone will hate me for what I'm about to do, but I have to think of my own happiness for once. We're planning to leave soon. Jason has connections in Dallas where we can start over. The hardest part will be Lily. I can't bear the thought of leaving her, but I can't take her from her father either. Maybe once we're settled, I can get partial custody. I just hope someday everyone will understand this wasn't a choice I made lightly. I read those words over and over, each time feeling like a fresh knife to the heart. She was planning to abandon our daughter, to walk away from the family we'd created, to destroy everything we'd built together. I thought about my father walking out the door with his suitcase when I was 12, not even looking back as I begged him to stay. I thought about my mother, working herself to exhaustion to provide for me. I thought about the promise I'd made to never inflict that kind of pain on my own child. And now Melissa was planning to do exactly that. The rage I'd been suppressing erupted inside me, a volcano of betrayal and hurt and disbelief. I wanted to wake her up right then, to confront her with the evidence of her treachery, but that wasn't the smart play. If I showed my hand too soon, she might take Lily and run before I could secure custody. I needed to be strategic, to think several moves ahead, to ensure that when I did make my move, it would be decisive. Meanwhile, I maintained the illusion of normalcy at home. I kissed her good morning and good night. I played with Lily. I complained about work and discussed plans for Lily's upcoming birthday party. But inside, I was hollow, watching my wife perform for me the same way she'd been performing our entire marriage. "Are you feeling okay?" Melissa asked one night as I pushed my dinner around my plate. "You seem distant lately." I looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered how she could sit across from me, concern in her eyes, after what she'd done earlier that day with Jason in our bed. "Just tired," I said. "Might be coming down with something." She reached across the table and took my hand, her wedding ring catching the light. "Poor baby. I'll take care of you this weekend." I almost laughed. The weekend was when I was planning to destroy her world, just as she had destroyed mine. As I lay in bed that night, Melissa's body curved against mine as if nothing was wrong. I thought about what I'd lost. Not just my wife's fidelity, but my belief in us, my trust in the life we'd built, my faith in my own judgment. How had I missed the signs? How long had I been living in a fantasy while reality crumbled around me? I thought about Lily, sleeping peacefully down the hall, unaware that her world was about to shatter. Would she hate me for what I was about to do? Would she understand someday? The thought of hurting her made me physically ill, but the alternative, letting her grow up in a house built on lies, seemed worse. I consulted a divorce attorney, secretly copying all the evidence I had gathered. Texas is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still impact property division and custody arrangements. With the video evidence and financial records, my lawyer assured me I'd likely get primary custody of Lily. "This is some of the clearest evidence of infidelity I've ever seen," he said, reviewing the files. "She won't have a leg to stand on." "What if she tries to take Lily?" I asked, my greatest fear spilling out. "We'll file for an emergency temporary order," he explained. "With this evidence, no judge would allow her to leave the jurisdiction with your daughter." I nodded, some of the weight lifting from my shoulders. "And the house? Our savings? Texas is a community property state, but given the circumstances, especially her secret account and the money she's been diverting, we can argue for an uneven distribution in your favor." It should have been a relief, knowing the law was on my side, but a quiet divorce wasn't enough. The betrayal cut too deep. Melissa hadn't just cheated on me, she'd brought another man into our home, into our bed, with our daughter's pictures on the nightstand. She'd made a fool of me in the place I was supposed to feel safest. No, she needed to face the consequences of her actions publicly. I wanted her to feel the shame and humiliation I'd felt watching those videos. I wanted her to lose the respect of our friends and family, just as she'd destroyed my respect for her. I wanted Jason to see the real Melissa, the conniving, deceitful woman behind the passionate lover. I set the stage carefully. Our anniversary was coming up, 7 years of marriage. I suggested we host a dinner party to celebrate, inviting our closest friends and family. Melissa was thrilled with the idea, helping me plan the menu and the guest list. "Let's invite Jason from the gym," she said casually as we finalized the invitations. "He's new in town and doesn't know many people. Plus, you two would get along great." The audacity almost impressed me. "Sure," I said. "The more, the merrier." Was this part of their plan, I wondered, to introduce him gradually into our social circle, laying groundwork for when they eventually went public? Or was it simply the thrill of having her lover under the same roof as her husband, playing both of us for fools? As the party approached, I fine-tuned my plan. I edited the camera footage into a concise but damning montage. I gathered financial records, emails, text messages, everything that proved the extent of her betrayal. I rehearsed what I would say, practicing my delivery until I could maintain complete composure. The day before the party, Melissa was unusually affectionate. She surprised me with lunch at work, her hand resting on my thigh under the table. She whispered suggestions for how we might celebrate after our guests left the next day. 7 years is a big milestone, she said, kissing my neck. I want to make it special for you. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if any of it had ever been real. Had she ever loved me, or was I just a convenient choice, stable, reliable, a good provider? Was everything, our wedding vows, our life together, Even our daughter, just part of a role she'd been playing? The day of the party arrived. I woke early, finalizing the preparations while Melissa took Lily to her parents' house. They would watch her for the evening, keeping her safely away from the fallout. "You seem nervous," Melissa commented when she returned, catching me checking the AV setup in the living room for the third time. "It's just a dinner party, babe." "I want everything to be perfect," I replied, which wasn't a lie. "It's not every day we celebrate 7 years together." She smiled, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind. "Have I told you lately how lucky I am to have you?" The sincerity in her voice almost made me doubt myself. Almost. By 7, our house was filled with guests. 16 people crowded into our dining room and living area. My brother Ryan and his wife, Melissa's parents, her sister Amy, neighbors, colleagues from my work, and friends from Melissa's social circle. And Jason, looking uncomfortable in a button-down shirt that strained against his muscular frame, bringing an expensive bottle of wine as a gift. "Thanks for having me," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Melissa speaks highly of you." I smiled, noticing how he deliberately kept his distance from my wife, playing the role of casual acquaintance. "She's mentioned you too." I caught the flash of panic in his eyes, quickly hidden behind a practiced smile. He knew I was onto him, but he had no idea what was coming. Dinner was a success. Melissa had outdone herself with the cooking, and the conversation flowed along with the wine. I watched her work the room, laughing and charming everyone as she always did. I watched Jason's eyes follow her when he thought no one was looking. I noticed the subtle signals between them. A lingering glance, a brush of fingers when she refilled his glass. I waited until dessert was served before making my move. "Before we cut the cake, I'd like to say a few words," I announced, standing at the head of the table. 7 years ago, I married Melissa, believing we would build a life of honesty and trust together. Melissa beamed at me from the other end of the table, raising her wine glass in a toast. "I'd like to share a glimpse of that life with all of you," I continued, picking up the remote control. "A little anniversary surprise." I pressed play. The large TV in our living room flickered to life, displaying a curated montage of footage from my hidden cameras. Melissa greeting Jason at the door, their passionate embraces in the kitchen, them heading upstairs together, Melissa on the phone, laughing about deceiving me, the separate bank account statements, the browser history showing searches for apartments in Dallas, the draft email to her sister, everything. The room fell silent except for the audio from the videos. Melissa's face drained of color. Jason stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. I turned to him calmly. "This is reality, Jason. Something you and my wife seem to have a problem with." Melissa's father got to his feet, his face contorted with anger and disappointment. Her mother started to cry. Amy stared at her sister in disbelief. "Ethan, please," Melissa whispered, her eyes darting around the room at the shocked faces of our friends and family. "Turn it off." "Why?" I asked. "Are you embarrassed? This is what you've been doing. These are the choices you've made. Don't you want everyone to see the real you?" Jason made a move toward the door, but my brother Ryan blocked his path. "You're not going anywhere, buddy." "This is insane," Jason protested, looking frantically around the room. "She told me you two were separated. She said you were abusive. Now it was my turn to be shocked." I looked at Melissa, who couldn't meet my eyes. "Is that what you told him?" She didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. "She said you hit her," Jason continued, desperation in his voice. "That you controlled all the money, isolated her from friends. That you were threatening to take Lily away if she left." The room grew even more silent, if that was possible. I could feel the weight of everyone's stares, some now uncertain, questioning. "That's why I helped her set up the separate account," Jason added, "so she could escape safely." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And I suppose that's why you slept with her in our bed. As some kind of rescue mission?" He had the decency to look ashamed at that. "Well, that's not all that she lied about," I said, changing the footage on the TV to show financial records. "While she was sleeping with Jason, she was also embezzling money from his gym, over $30,000 in the past 3 months. Jason's face contorted in confusion, then anger as he realized what I was saying. You told me you were borrowing that money for your divorce, he said to Melissa. You said you'd pay it back. I shrugged. Apparently she lies to everyone. What happened next unfolded in a blur. Jason lunged at Melissa, screaming about the money. Ryan and two of my colleagues restrained him while someone called the police. Melissa's parents left without a word to their daughter, her mother sobbing as her father guided her to their car. The neighbors and friends made awkward exits, the shock of the evening's revelations heavy in their expressions. Melissa sat frozen at the dining table, tears streaming down her face. She didn't try to defend herself or explain. She just sat there watching as her carefully constructed world collapsed around her. When the police arrived, I showed them the footage of Jason's violent outburst and explained about the embezzlement. They took him away in handcuffs, promising to investigate the financial allegations. Through it all, my brother's wife, a pediatric nurse, stayed by my side, her hand on my shoulder, a silent support as I watched the aftermath of my orchestrated destruction. After everyone had gone, we faced each other across the ruins of our anniversary dinner. How long have you known? She finally asked, her voice barely audible. Long enough, I replied. The divorce papers will be delivered tomorrow. I'm filing for full custody of Lily. Her head snapped up. You can't take my daughter. Watch me. I gestured to the TV, which now displayed a blank screen. No judge will give custody to someone who brings strange men into the family home while her child is sleeping upstairs, or someone who steals money and plans to disappear. It wasn't like that, she protested weakly. Then what was it like, Melissa? Explain it to me. Help me understand how you could betray everything we built together. She collapsed into a chair, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I was unhappy, she whispered. For so long, I've been unhappy. And you couldn't talk to me about it? Your husband, the father of your child? You wouldn't have understood, she said. You're so perfect, so sure of everything, so strong. I didn't know how to tell you that I felt trapped, that I needed more than this life. So instead, you lied. You cheated. You stole. You planned to take my daughter away from me. My voice remained steady, even as rage boiled inside me. You could have asked for a divorce at any time, Melissa. I would have given you one, but you chose to destroy me instead. She looked up at me, mascara streaking down her face. I never meant to hurt you, Ethan. I just got lost somewhere along the way. Save it for someone who still believes your lies, I said, turning to leave the room. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. You should start packing your things. Please, she begged, reaching for my arm. Please don't take Lily from me. She's everything to me. I jerked away from her touch. You should have thought of that before you invited your lover into her home. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, listening to Melissa's muffled sobs through the wall. Despite everything, some part of me wanted to go to her, to comfort her, as I had done countless times over the years. But that part was overwhelmed by the betrayal, the anger, the shattered trust. I thought about the vows we'd made, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Empty words now, stripped of meaning by her actions. When morning came, Melissa was gone. She'd taken some clothes, her laptop, and her personal items. She left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter along with a note. I'm staying with Amy. I know you hate me right now, and you have every right to. But please, Ethan, don't use Lily to punish me. Whatever I've done, she doesn't deserve to lose her mother. Call me when you're ready to talk about arrangements for her. I crumpled the note and threw it away. I wasn't using Lily to punish Melissa. I was protecting my daughter from a woman who had proven herself selfish and untrustworthy. A woman who had been willing to abandon her child for a man she barely knew. The days that followed were a storm of legal proceedings and painful conversations. Lily stayed with my brother while Melissa moved out of the house permanently. The divorce was expedited given the circumstances, and as my lawyer predicted, I was granted primary custody. Melissa received supervised visitation rights only, pending completion of a psychological evaluation. Jason faced charges for assault and was under investigation for his part in the gym's financial irregularities. It turned out he had a history of targeting vulnerable women, manipulating them emotionally and financially. Melissa was just his latest victim. But knowing that didn't ease the pain of betrayal. Nothing could undo the damage to our family. Lily asked about her mother constantly. When is mommy coming home? Why can't I see her? Is she mad at me? Each question was a knife to my heart. I tried to answer honestly without burdening her with adult complexities. Mommy and Daddy can't live together anymore, but we both love you very much. You'll see her soon, I promise. The first supervised visit was at a family center, a sterile room with toys and books meant to create a child-friendly environment. Melissa arrived early, her face pale and drawn, her once stylish clothes hanging loosely on her frame. She'd lost weight, too much, too quickly. She burst into tears when Lily ran to her, gathering our daughter in her arms and holding her tight. I stood in the corner, watching them together, feeling like an intruder in their moment. I miss you so much, baby, Melissa whispered, stroking Lily's hair. Are you being good for Daddy? Lily nodded solemnly. When are you coming home? Melissa's eyes met mine over Lily's head. Silently pleading, I looked away. I'm not coming home, sweetheart, she said gently. Mommy and Daddy are going to live in different houses now. But that doesn't mean we love you any less. Lily's lower lip trembled. But why? Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, Melissa explained. Big ones that change everything. Did you make a mistake, Mommy? Melissa closed her eyes briefly, pain etched in every line of her face. Yes, baby. I made a very big mistake. After the visit, I found Melissa waiting by my truck in the parking lot. Thank you, she said quietly, for bringing her. For letting her see me, I nodded stiffly. She needs her mother. Ethan. She hesitated. I know you hate me right now, and you have every right to, but please believe that I never meant for any of this to happen. Jason, he caught me at a vulnerable time. He made me feel seen in ways I hadn't in years. Don't, I warned. Don't try to justify what you did. I'm not, she insisted. I'm trying to explain. There's a difference. The time for explanations was before you brought another man into our bed, before you lied to our friends about me being abusive, before you planned to take my daughter away from me. She flinched at each accusation. I know I've destroyed everything. I need you to know that I did love you. That wasn't a lie. I stared at her, this woman I'd once known better than myself, now a stranger. It doesn't matter anymore, Melissa. We're done. In the weeks that followed, I tried to create a new normal for Lily and myself. I adjusted my work schedule, hired a reliable babysitter, set up play dates with friends from her kindergarten class. I learned to style her hair for school, to pack lunches she would actually eat, to help with simple homework assignments. I became both mother and father, determined to fill the gap Melissa had left. Meanwhile, Melissa spiraled. She missed 2 supervised visits, claiming illness. She lost her teaching job after parents complained about the scandal. She moved out of Amy's place and into a cheap apartment across town. According to Amy, who called occasionally to check on Lily, Melissa was barely functioning, sleeping all day, drinking at night, refusing to seek help. I'm worried about her, Amy admitted during one call. She's not the sister I know. She's not the wife I knew either, I replied, unable to summon sympathy. But that's not my problem anymore. 3 months after the disastrous anniversary dinner, I received a call from the Austin Police Department. Melissa had been found dead in a motel room on the outskirts of the city. Apparent suicide. The detective's voice was clinical as he explained the details. Pills and alcohol. A note addressed to me was found beside her. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Despite everything, I had never imagined this outcome. Never thought she would choose to leave Lily permanently. I read the note later that day in the sterile environment of the police station, my fingers trembling as I unfolded the paper. Ethan, my behavior has no excuse. I was weak and lost, and instead of talking to you, I let someone manipulate me into believing lies about myself and our marriage. The money wasn't for me. Jason convinced me his business was in trouble, that he needed help, that once it was back on track, we'd be together. I was a fool. I never stopped loving you and Lily, even when I was hurting you both. Please tell our daughter that Mommy made mistakes, but she loved her more than anything in this world. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me, even though I can't forgive myself. I'm sorry for not being strong enough to face the consequences of my actions. Melissa, I didn't cry when I finished reading. I felt nothing but a hollow emptiness, where anger and betrayal had burned so fiercely just months before. The detective watched me fold the letter and place it back in the evidence bag. We'll need to keep this for now, he said, but you can request a copy for your records. That won't be necessary, I replied. The words on the page wouldn't change anything. They couldn't bring back the woman I'd married or heal the wounds she'd left behind. That evening, I picked up Lily from my brother's house. She ran to me with open arms, her innocent face lighting up at the sight of me. Daddy, did you bring Mommy? Is she coming home now? The question pierced through my numbness. How do you tell a 5-year-old that her mother is never coming back? That the woman who read her bedtime stories and kissed her scraped knees had chosen to leave this world rather than face the mess she'd created? I knelt down to Lily's level, taking her small hands in mine. No, sweetheart. Mommy won't be coming home. Her lower lip trembled. Is she still mad at us? Did we do something wrong? No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. I pulled her into a tight hug, feeling her tears dampen my shirt. Sometimes people make mistakes and they don't know how to fix them. Your mom loved you very much, but she couldn't find her way back to us. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked me to check under the bed and in the closet for monsters. I did so diligently, assuring her that she was safe. Daddy, she whispered as I kissed her forehead, will you ever go away like Mommy did? The question broke something inside me. I took a deep breath, fighting back tears. Never. I will always be here for you, Lily, always. That's a promise. As I closed her bedroom door, I thought about the cameras still hidden throughout the house, the ones that had revealed the truth and torn apart our family. I spent the night removing each one, erasing the digital footprints of our collapse. The next day, I buried the hardware in the backyard, under the oak tree Melissa and I had planted when we first moved in, a fitting grave for the death of trust. My brother helped me arrange the funeral. It was a small, somber affair. Melissa's parents attended, grief etched deep in their faces. Her sister Amy stood beside them, holding her mother's hand. A few friends came, those who had known Melissa longest and could separate the woman from her mistakes. I didn't speak at the service. I had nothing to say that wouldn't sound hollow or hypocritical. Instead, I stood silently, holding Lily's hand, watching as they lowered my wife's coffin into the ground. Afterwards, Melissa's mother approached me, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. I don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. Why would she do this? She had so much to live for. She had Lily. I had no answers for her. No explanations that could make sense of Melissa's final choice. She loved you, her mother continued. Even at the end, when everything fell apart, she never stopped loving you and Lily. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Don't let Lily forget her, she pleaded. Whatever happened between you two, don't let our granddaughter forget her mother. I won't, I promised. It was the least I could do. Life moved forward as it inevitably does. Lily started kindergarten. I adjusted my work schedule to be home more. We adopted a dog from the shelter, a gentle golden retriever we named Max, who quickly became Lily's constant companion. On what would have been Melissa's 35th birthday, Lily and I visited her grave. It was the first time I'd been there since the funeral. Can I put flowers for Mommy? Lily asked, clutching a bouquet of daisies, Melissa's favorite. Of course you can. She placed them carefully at the base of the headstone, then traced her mother's name with her finger. Do you think she can see us from heaven? I looked up at the clear blue Texas sky. I believe she can. Do you think she's sorry? The question caught me off guard. I considered how to answer, wanting to be honest without burdening my daughter with adult complexities. Yes, I finally said. I think she was very sorry. Lily nodded thoughtfully. I'm sorry too. I miss her. Me too, sweetheart. Every day. And it was true in a way I hadn't expected. I missed the woman I thought I'd married, the life I thought we were building. But that woman had never really existed. The real Melissa had been far more complicated, flawed, and human in ways I hadn't wanted to see. As we walked back to the car hand in hand, I realized that the cameras had shown me the truth, but not the whole truth. They had captured actions but not intentions, behaviors but not the pain behind them. They had given me facts but robbed me of the chance to understand, to forgive, to heal together. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd confronted Melissa privately when I first discovered the affair. If I'd given her the opportunity to explain, to make amends. If my need for revenge hadn't overshadowed everything else. Would she still be alive? Would we have found a way forward, even if not together? Would Lily still have her mother, but those thoughts lead nowhere? We can't rewind life like camera footage. Can't edit out the parts that hurt too much to watch. We can only move forward, carrying our scars and trying to learn from them. Today, 5 years after Melissa's death, Lily is a bright, resilient 10-year-old who has her mother's smile and my determination. She asks about Melissa sometimes, wanting to know stories from before. I tell her the good ones, how her mother sang off-key in the shower, how she could make friends with anyone, how her laugh could fill a room. I've dated occasionally, but nothing serious. Trust comes harder now. I look for cameras in every new place I visit, a habit I can't seem to break. I check and double-check locks, passwords, bank statements, hypervigilance, my therapist calls it, a normal response to betrayal. Last week, Lily asked me if I ever get lonely. Sometimes, I admitted. But I have you, and Max, and my friends. She considered this with the solemnity only a child can muster. Mom would want you to be happy, Dad. She wouldn't want you to be alone because of what happened.